Part 1 ends with a breath that finally answers back. Ethan and Ghost wake a hidden acoustic station, pair their hearts to a 0.7 hertz pulse, and speak a name the deep can hear. Off the shelf, a courteous listener holds its distance, while a heavier hunter learns the hard way that some doors open on stillness. The storm isn't over. The rock remembers. And somewhere below, a third door is waiting. If that slow pulse is still in your chest, subscribe and tap the bell so you won't miss the next chapter. Tell me in the comments who or what do you think the deep really is, and what should we ask it next? Click the next episode, Part 1B, HR-69, the west face opens, and let's step through. By late afternoon, the horizon had no edges left. The Atlantic didn't end. It happened. Squalls marched in ranks so tight they looked like a single organism, white teeth inside gray gums. Seawolf ledge hunched and did what rocks are born to do: stand, be struck, stand again. Ethan secured a final line, his hands working with the steadiness of a man who knows panic wastes the only resource that matters: time. Ghost took posture at the lip of the cove, chest forward, weight even, tail down, a soldier at a door that never closes. Inside, the control chamber waited in its own weather. The cold, bloodless climate of machines that don't need to pretend. The 0.7 hertz pulse traced its sovereign path across the main display. The thin blue filament sat at the shelf edge like a needle, deciding whether to sew or cut. Gust onset within 3 minutes, Mara said. 45 knots, gusting 55, barometric drop accelerating. Copy, Ethan said. He put a hand to the central rib, a reflex, a superstition. He couldn't feel the storm there, not directly. He felt the rock's reply, noted. The first wave hit the west face as if someone had tipped the sea on its side. Water pried at the ladder rungs. Spray salted the ceiling of the shack above and ran in quick, decisive veins through old seams of caulk. Ethan toggled the overhead cam. The shack's roof flexed like a chest trying not to cough. A shingle leapt free and vanished into spray. Then the north wall tore a line that wasn't there this morning, ringed a crack like a slow lightning bolt, opening a finger-width mouth to the weather. Ghost did not bark. He looked at Ethan the way only dogs can. We are going to do the right thing steadily now. Structural integrity above, declining, Mara reported. Recommendation: evacuate the shack and remain below for duration. We're already below, Ethan said, habit-making humor where none was. Seal what you can. Bulkhead seals secured, west cavern membranes shifting to absorb surge, power reserves adequate. Advise: choose position under the central rib. He and Ghost moved under the rib seam, steel on granite, hand on fur, and waited for the next sentence the weather would speak. It arrived as a shove that didn't ask permission. The shack answered with splinter music, sharp and plural. A window frame gave up the job, and the room above became outside in a single breath. Debris skittered along the rock like hammers thrown sideways. Ghost pressed his shoulder harder into Ethan's shin. Julian's note came back, as if the page had been grafted under his skin. If you feel the house move, go below. We are below. Go further. The central grate flexed under them. Not much. Just enough for Ethan to feel that the chamber wasn't a room after all, but a lid. He dropped to a knee and raked his lamp across the mesh. In grazing light, gaps confessed their edges. There. A seam in the steel, traced with old. Chalk marks faint as discarded breath. He set his fingers to the seam. It was cold enough to warm the skin, but not so cold as to lie about the heat below. Ghost leaned, a slow, deliberate pressure. The sorrow howl gathered and did not release, a held note inside a chest. Mara, Ethan said, calm, shaved to the quick. Is there a lower level? A pause. The kind that implies computation and doubt took hands for once. Julian's map hints at substratum access, not in public schema, likely manual release, keyed by phase or weight. The rock is also a switch, Ethan said. Yes, Mara admitted softly, a switch that dislikes being told but appreciates being understood. The zero point 0.7 hertz pulse deepened, not louder, truer, and the grate under Ethan's palm vibrated in a way the body interprets as invitation. He breathed with the crest and let his weight follow stillness instead of force. Something underneath complied, a muffled thunk like a jaw unhinging to take bread. The grate shifted a fraction, then slid apart in two crescents. Below, a secondary hatch in granite, its surface laced with concentric grooves no human hand would carve for decoration. In the center, a small gear socket. Ethan's throat clicked. He didn't have to reach for the brass T-handle. His hand already knew its weight. The socket took the key the way a wound takes a finger you trust. The engraved arrows on the T-handle flashed in lamplight. Left quarter. Pause. Right half. On the breath, Ethan said to no one and to everything. He waited for the trough, the still point, and turned left a quarter. The storm punched the ledge. The array rode it like a competitor who knows the judge admires balance more than flair. Ethan waited one count and turned right a half. The hatch listened. Then it moved. The world described a circle, a granite disc turning in rochetted steps, each tuned to duck under the storm's pounding and use its downstroke to ease the up. The air that came up was colder than old mistakes, sweet with ozone and a hint of oil that had not evaporated since the last living hand left it so. "Ghost?" Ethan said. The dog was already at the edge, peering down with pupils gone coin wide. "Caution," Mara said. "Unknown atmosphere below." "Understood," he said, and listened for what a meter could not measure. The breath count remained in his body like a friend holding a door. The ladder below was steel and quiet. Ethan felt each rung tell him the weight it was rated for, and he told it back what he currently weighed, man plus wet clothes plus giant dog's expectation. Ghost waited while Ethan went down 2 rungs, then 3, and then followed at heel. Step, pause, step, pause. The old choreography of sensible beasts. The lower chamber was narrower, longer, a throat devoted entirely to instruments. Racks lined both sides, older than the gear above, but kept by dryness in museum condition. Their labels were etched, not stuck. Prox acoustic, phase coupler, delay lattice. At the end, a control pedestal set into the rock like an altar. It wasn't powered. It remembered power. Ethan raised the lamp and saw a plate in the pedestal's face, brass hand engraved, "When storm and pulse agree, ask the west face to open." Below it, tiny, "JC ask" is a verb that changes a room. Ethan put his palm to the pedestal as if taking an oath. "Mara," he said, "can we call the diaphragm from here?" "Yes," she said after a breath-long pause. "Manual override via phase coupler. This is a teaching console. He built a classroom under his cathedral." "Then class is in session." Up top, the storm had settled into its thesis, persist. The shack protested and surrendered pieces of itself in quantities the ocean accepted as payment. The station beneath used every shove as charge. The west diaphragm breathed hard, like a runner who knows the point of breath isn't air, it's rhythm. Ethan set the phase coupler toggles by feel and by Julian's margins. 3, hold. 4, in absence, not pressure. He waited for the moment the 0.7 and the storm's internal grammar overlapped, a crossing of tides in a room both wet and dry. "Window," Mara said, "and now." He pressed the ask bar. Somewhere inside the ledge, the west face altered its hinge. A pressure change walked down the rock into Ethan's bones. On the scope, the 0.7 lifted a shoulder and showed a second plane beneath it, a sub-layer that had hidden under our habits since the first wave struck a stone. The blue filament on the shelf edge did something it hadn't done in all the time it had been pretending to be uninterested. It stopped. The line sharpened. It oriented. Then it moved with intent, not at them, but toward the opening they had just made. They felt that, Mara said, and there was no science left in it, only truth. All listeners felt that. The filament thickened, a hair becoming a wire. Its approach profile developed those small stutters that mean a human seated inside is checking boxes. Ballast trim, vector check, comms tight. It stayed off the direct line to Seawolf Ledge by a degree the way a cautious man avoids eye contact while staring. Range? Ethan asked. 12 cables, 11, 10, reducing, Mara said, storm noise interfering, but they're riding the back of the gusts the way you ride the breath. Ghost went statue still, the stillness before motion. His ears tracked a sound Ethan didn't hear yet. The dog's sphinx calm broke into a low growl that carried decision with it. The station's passive sensors do not panic. They simply report. A secondary signature echoed behind the filament, larger, dirtier, less patient. Whoever had come to listen had not come alone. A hunter had rented himself a listener. 2 contacts, Ethan said. Affirm, Mara replied. Primary, submersible, small, low profile. Secondary, heavier class, poor storm discipline, relying on primary's ears. Ethan's breathwork tried to run. He pinned it with practice. Julian didn't build this to be a trap, he said. No, Mara said. He built it to be a test. The lower console held a second brass plate. Smaller, almost sheepish. Ethan wiped grime with his sleeve and read, "Do not close a door with a shout. Let it close around your silence." He stared a second, then understood with a click that had no sound. He'd opened a shape in the rock by asking politely, but closing it required less, not more. "Mara," he said, "will withdraw the phase. All at once will be a shout. We'll taper, 3, hold, 4 in reverse, a soft no." "Copy, taper programmed." He waited for the crest to become a shelf, then backed the phase out in the old rhythm, like closing a door without letting the latch announce itself. The scope showed the subplane tuck itself back under the 0.7, the way a sleeping child rolls to face the wall so he can dream. The primary filament hesitated, adjusted trim, slid lateral, searching for the opening that had ceased to be an opening. The secondary overshot, impatient, and drifted past. The storm cuffed it for being rude to physics. Mara tracked 2 minor pressure events, ballast corrections that tasted like embarrassment. "They will not go away," she said, "but they will remember that doors can close without being slammed." "Good," Ethan said. "Maybe they'll learn the alphabet we're sharing." The station took a long breath, the kind that isn't lungs. It's agreement. Above, something in the shack let go with a clean, honest sound, a beam surrendering to years. Ethan didn't flinch. Structures finished their sentences however they must. Ghost stayed pressed to him, eyes bright, choosing not to announce the inevitable. On the scope, the 0.7 unfurled texture again, the fine fibrils rising and falling, the sand-on-glass whisper. It replied with 3, hold, 4, and added the friendly 5th pulse at the end, a child's small, impossible joke during a funeral. "We still know how to smile." Ethan wrote fast without looking. West face opened on ask. All listeners stirred. Primary approached. Secondary revealed. Closed on stillness. Memory retained. He set the pencil down. His hand shook with the old emotion that belongs equally to church, storm, and love. "You did not shout," Mara said. "You made a room." "That's the job," he said. "Make rooms for other things to live long enough to speak." The storm went on saying its one word. The rock kept translating. Stay. The blue filament retreated to a distance that means later. The heavier shadow learned the first rule of this ledge. The door watches you back. Ethan took Ghost's face in both hands and pressed his brow to the dog's brow. A brief, mutual blessing. When he let go, the station felt were beaten for half a second, like a boat at dock and a heart at home. Then the lights wavered, not in warning, but like a person nodding yes when no one asked out loud. They waited together, man, dog, stone, and the voice that had learned to be kind for whatever the next watch would ask of them. By midnight, the storm had stopped acting like weather and started acting like an argument that refused to let the other side speak. Sheets of rain came sheared into strings. Gusts didn't arrive so much as lean their whole existence onto the ledge at once. The shack above had already rendered its tithe, a roof panel here, a siding there, and now existed as a shape the wind could hum through. Below, the station moved with a different will. The wave regulators on the west face drank violence and exhaled rhythm. The battery banks registered their fullness with modest green. The main screen brushed the deep with its slow 0.7 hertz hand, reading a world that had decided to thrash in one octave while keeping its oldest beat in another. Ethan stood with his palm on the central rib, counting breath against pulse. Ghost had learned the exact footprint beneath him where steel was warmest. He lay with his spine lined to it, eyes half-lidded in the way soldiers pretend to sleep. Advisory, Mara said, gentle and factual. We are approaching surplus. Recommend divert to heat trace on lower conduits and pre-charge delay lattice. Do it, Ethan said, or storm pays up, we bank it. Acknowledged, storm logic engaged. Storm logic. It sounded like a joke, but it wasn't. It was the plain calculus of a place that refused to choose between enduring and listening. On the far right of the display, the thin blue filament didn't make the rookie mistake twice. It held station on the shelf, then inched north, parallel to the ledge, but just outside the easy lines of sight. It wasn't looking at Seawolf anymore. It was looking at shore geology as if the island were not a fortress but a flute with more than one finger hole. They're probing the north cleft, Mara said, and rock geometry suggests a minor channel, not a door, a leak. Leaks become doors if you lean, Ethan murmured. Range? 10 cables. Now 9. They're letting the storm talk for them. Ghost stood without rising, a fold from bone to readiness. His paws moved a half step apart, enough to plant the idea of balance before the need. The hair along his spine was neither up nor down. It was counting. Ethan logged once without looking. Blue listener testing north cleft. Leak risk. He moved to the side console, ran the low-frequency map to surface geometry. The trident shape of rock fingers made by the ledge's northern face resolved in false color. Kelp there was thick as ropes. Kraken's hair, Julian had called it. The man had loved story because story told the truth in larger letters. Advise tone-only masking, Mara said, not pressure. We hum loud and low at the cleft, not to hide, to invite another way. Doors close on stillness, Ethan said, but sometimes doors open on welcome. He nodded. Do it! Masking deployed, clef hum set to sub 0.7 non-destructive, friendly. The station sang into the rock with the side of its mouth. The cleft answered with gravel, smooth softness. The blue filament paused, then drifted. Not fooled, but redirected. At Row 17, 3 things happened at once. A gust hit, the kind that snatches coats from hooks and makes doors forget their hinges. A breaker popped, not the big one, a precise little tyrant with a gift for timing. The lights in the chamber went black. Ghost didn't bark. He pressed against Ethan's leg with that firm, anchoring weight that says we are not lost. We are held. Ethan stood still because there was nothing useful to do by moving. The hum did not go. The 0.7 did not blink. Sight fled. Sound remained. The room rearranged itself around what had always mattered most. He heard the battery banks shift duty, the way a crew shifts stations. No drama, just shoes on deck. He heard the wave regulators take another inch of storm and give back the inch as breath. He heard Ghost's diaphragm, slow and loyal, catch the old count. Power pathway reroute, Mara said, voice unflustered. Now only in his headset. The ceiling speakers had gone to bed for the hour. Delay lattice holding. Visuals paused. Audio true. This is not a blackout. This is instruction. Copy, Ethan whispered and smiled once into the dark where no one had to see it. He had been taught by people who believed in removing one sense to train another. Night vision for ears, storm logic for hands. He stayed still. He listened for what silence wanted him to know next. It arrived in a way that felt illegal. Not through the array, not through the speakers, through the rock. A voice moved along the rib under his palm, not as vibration, but as a shape his bones recognized from somewhere childhood lives. The sound of a voice conducted through a table when your father knocks a rap pattern and you knock back. If you're below me, you learn to ask, the voice said. Julian. Not a tape, not a file. The cadence had the errors of living speech, the small hummingbird flutters of a man trying not to show how much he wants to say this right. Mara, you listening? Julian asked. Always, Mara answered. And Ethan understood she was not remembering. She was participating in a memory that had never been pressed to tape. Build the class under the lid, Julian said, the words landing in Ethan's hand like tools. Teach the keeper to breathe first, then to direct breath. If I'm gone when he arrives, tell him. Don't run this because he can. Run it because the sea is asking a question. Ethan felt the next sentence as a weight change rather than audio. And if men come with ears hired by guns, Julian said softly, do not fight them by speaking louder. Make rooms so full of listening that their shouting embarrasses them. The rock breathed. Ethan stood inside someone else's last advice. End instruction, Julian said. The way a man closes a prayer. The rib cooled under Ethan's palm by a temperature enough to notice. The voice left. The room kept it anyway. Ghost nudged Ethan's knee with his nose. Once, the way a partner says still here without moving the pieces. The lights came back not with a flourish, but with a decision. One by one, the panel edges found their dim. The main screen rose from black salt to soft blue. The 0.7 was where it had promised to be. Power normalized, Mara said, recording restored. Notations, playback never recorded, flagged for human ethics review. She paused. You will not submit it, but it comforts me to label the impossible. Ethan let out the breath he hadn't realized he was holding and let another replace it. Orderly counted. Storm logic holds? Holds, Mara said. West face paying well, grid resilient, north cleft humming friendly, blue listener adjusting, predicting southern attempt on Kraken's hair. Trident, Ethan said, and felt the story's big letters again. They'll go for the long kelp fields and try to read a seam from drag. Correct. Let's beat them there with welcome again. Programming hum, Mara said, tone only, no pressure. We do not teach them to pry. On the northern monitor, the false color map of the Kraken's hair lit with threads where kelp combed the current. Mara slid a low hum along the bedrock beneath, like a hand smoothing a blanket over a sleeping child. The blue filament resolved a hair more in my ears, closer, more honest. It drifted along the kelp edge, paused at a spot where two beds braided and opened, a small fin flicker, trimming ballast, a polite man at a stranger's fence. They are matching the hum, Mara said, not aggressively, curiosity only. Ethan leaned toward the screen as if that would matter. No pressure components? None. They haven't learned that language. Good. Ghost made a noise that was barely a noise, a tisk through his teeth, a dog's version of His ears swiveled to the ceiling and back. He chose not to growl. He opted for note-taking. The filament drifted on, unfulfilled. The larger shadow behind, the hunter, held farther back, trying to learn from the listener without confessing it needed to. Some men come to the church to mock before they kneel, Mara said. Do they kneel? Ethan asked. Depends on the storm, she said. At Euro 140, a new red blinked at the array's flank. Not failure, overflow. The storm had over-delivered. The station was more than full. Recommendation, Mara said. We can either dump to heat and burn galvanics or spend it. Spend it how? By giving the ocean a gentle, wide, sub-0.7 hum that makes nothing move. A hospitality signal. You would call it mercy. Ethan rubbed his jaw. Julian would call it waste unless it teaches. It will teach, Mara said, no longer careful. It will teach that not all doors are purchases, some are gifts. He closed his eyes for a count and saw a roof panel spin into the dark. He opened his eyes and saw the dog. Spend it, he said. Spending, Mara answered, relief like a breath in code. The delay lattice unwound a gentle, miles-wide undertone into the ledge. Nothing any machine could steer by, everything those who listen could rest inside. The graph didn't change much. The room did. Ethan felt his shoulders drop from a height he hadn't noticed they were guarding. Ghost flattened his ears once, then let them go slack, the dog's version of putting down a bag he never admits is heavy. The blue filament had one more trick. At Aero 210, it cut its engine altogether and let buoyancy and storm pick it up by the shirt collar. It drifted, not toward Seawolf, but toward the west face where the ledge's diaphragm hid inside its granite body. The move was ugly and smart. Humans find doors by falling through them sometimes. They're going dumb, Mara said. We cannot hum them away if they claim to be debris. Doors prefer stillness, Ethan said. Let's be most still. He withdrew the phase shaping from the west face until only bare respiration remained. No ask, no show, just the body keeping itself being a body. The station became a man asleep on his side while a child creeps past, convinced he is invisible. The filament drifted across the west face and found nothing to lever. It floated on, picked up by an eddy the storm had changed its mind about, and slid north again, chastened without being scolded. Outcome. They learn the shape of no lever, Mara said. Sometimes the lesson is the absence of purchase. Good, Ethan said. May all our enemies study that. Ghost sneezed, a tiny explosion that made them both laugh quietly like men who have been allowed not to die for another hour. Sometime after 300, the storm stopped campaigning and settled into governance. Firm, relentless, less theatrical. The 0.7 stayed present the way a steady hand stays on your shoulder, not heavy, not light, simply there. Ethan logged and ate half a protein bar as if it were a holy thing. Ghost accepted the other half out of politeness and because he was starving. Playback of never recorded? Ethan asked softly. No, Mara said. That was grace, not a button. He nodded. The word sat without wobbling. He opened Julian's journal for no reason except that the man's handwriting had become a kind of light. On a back page, at a tilt, a note he hadn't seen. If it goes dark and you can still hear, you are on the right side of the door. Ethan set the journal down and rested his head back against the rib. Ghost pressed his muzzle to Ethan's wrist so that Pulse could teach Pulse. The station hummed a wide, empty kindness into the bones of the ledge. The blue filament loitered in a way that meant tomorrow. The heavier shadow remembered embarrassment and tried not to memorize it as a map. When dawn came, it would reveal nothing new and everything changed. Storm logic leaves a world that pretends to be the same. Ethan closed his eyes for a 3 count and opened them without losing the beat. Status? He asked. We're held, Mara said, and we are holding. Then we stay, he said. Ghost didn't answer. He simply slept, not because it was safe, but because it was time. Morning arrived like a held breath released between grindstones. The storm did not end. It stepped aside. A narrow band of sky opened, the color of a polished coin, and through that coin slot of mercy the Atlantic showed Ethan a face that wasn't generous, only clear. The shack above was now more gesture than structure, its roof scalloped, its windows mouth shapes the wind had memorized. Below, the station hummed without haste. The 0.7 Hz line drew itself across the screen with the confidence of a signature practiced for years. Window of relative quiet, 30 to 40 minutes, Mara said, ideal for deliberate contact. Ethan had slept in quarter-hour rations. Ghost had slept in fragments that pretended not to be sleep. They looked like men who had earned coffee and got breath count instead. Ethan put a palm on the central rib. We ask carefully. We answer what we ask, Mara replied. That's how doors learn their hinges. He glanced at the north monitor, the blue listener held outside the shelf, behaving. The hunter lingered behind like an opinion waiting for a microphone. Julian's hand on the page said, Offer bones, not alphabet. Ethan flipped the oilskin journal to the back where the man's shortest sentences lived. Give a word with your life, not your tongue. If the sea speaks, give it someone, not something. He looked at Ghost. The shepherd met his eyes with that unreadable canine gravity that belongs to old statues and good surgeons. What word? Mara asked, not impatient, simply ready. Not mine, Ethan said. We gave mine already. He crouched, hooked his fingers under Ghost's jaw in the way that calms both dog and man. If we teach anything new, let it be him. He's been listening longer than we have. Ethan wrote on a scrap, Ghost. Below it, he mapped 3, hold, 4, into the fractional pauses the diaphragm understood, absence in the west face, not pressure. Then he added a new punctuation between the clusters, breath, a soft, resting nothing. Encoding complete, Mara said. We will not speak it, we will breathe it. Ghost huffed once, a sound like a door sealing on its own. Ethan stood at the phase coupler and waited for mercy to widen another inch in the sky. The 0.7 crested up the screen like a tide lifting a dock. He inhaled with it, exhaled into the trough. On the third count, he touched send. Below, the diaphragm softened its cycle. 3 small absences, 1 stillness, 4 small absences. GHOST, spelled with no instead of yes, the way a hand learns a face by not pressing. There was no drama. The ledge carried the message into its body as if it had always been a rib meant for this breath. He waited. Mara did not fill the waiting with language. Ghost did not move. The 0.7 shivered once, like a line of hair lifting on a neck. The wave regulators registered a fractional back pressure, echo. Then the return came, not louder, not higher, closer. 3, hold 4, mirrored back, and after it, a tiny 5th pulse, that small, impossible joke the deep kept sharing. Ethan didn't smile. He received it the way one receives a hand across a table and doesn't crush the fingers. Acknowledgement, Mara said, almost inaudible. Again, Ethan whispered. He sent the name once more. No insistence, only cadence. The return answered with the same shape, but the texture changed. The fibrils on the line thickened, as if the echo dragged grain up from below, a sand-on-glass whisper mapped into pulse. They are adding, Mara said, a layer your ear can't parse, your bones can. Ethan let his sternum hear it. Something under the ache moved aside to make room. Far away, the blue filament slipped a cable closer, then stopped like a chess player's hand hovering over a pawn. It didn't interrupt. It listened. The heavier shadow behind angled discreetly into a position that said we are indifferent and looked exactly like vigilance. Continue, Mara asked. Hold, Ethan said. We asked. Let the sea take its time making an answer shape. He put his ear to the rib, not to hear with ear, but to remind the rib that humans still pressed bone to bone when they meant stay. He thought of all the years Julian had leaned like this, teaching an unteachable thing how to be patient. The 0.7 deepened again. The grain settled into a pattern that wasn't pattern, like seeing faces in wood grain, except the wood saw back. Ethan felt the urge to force and let it pass. Doors open on stillness. Mara pinged a soft reminder, window narrowing. Understood, he said. He did not hurry. He made the next ask smaller. When the answer came, it did not honor his alphabet. It had the disrespect good teachers have for student expectations. The line split into two, then rejoined, harmonic, briefly visible. Then it stuttered out a new sequence in breath cuts. 2, 1, 5, 3, 5. Mara's transliteration was immediate and useless, numbers in a row. Ethan ignored numbers. He watched Ghost. The dog's ears moved as if someone had called his name from another room that didn't share walls with this one. He stood, not quick, not slow, and put both paws on the rib where Ethan's palm had just left, claiming that piece of steel with dog certainty. Again, Ethan said, but the deep was already doing again. 2, 1, 5, 3, 5, followed by the small fifth that felt like a grin hidden in church. What is that? Mara asked, first time she'd asked him. Not letters, Ethan said. Footfall? He placed his hand to Ghost's ribs and counted the shift when the dog lifted and set. Lifted and set. 2 light, 1 heavy, 5 light. No, not gait. Steps. The way Ghost eased down the ladder, 2 tentative, 1 commit, 3 5. The station had watched the dog move and replayed it back as name. He looked at Ghost. They're saying you. Ghost didn't understand language, not like that, but he understood address. His head tilted, his tail lifted from the floor a half inch, and his breath made a tiny O-shaped sound that Ethan had never heard and wished he had recorded and was glad he had not. Evidence, Mara said softly. They can name what we did not tell them. Proof, Ethan said. We're not alone in the room. The coin slot of sky narrowed. The wind's throat cleared. Somewhere in the register of human ignorance, a new sound arrived. Not in the air, in the steel. Ghost's belly dropped to the floor. No drama, just now. He turned his head toward the west face, not the external wall, the cavern inside. He made no sound, then made one. A half bark swallowed into a growl you could barely call a growl. Ethan felt it in his ankle bone before he registered it as warning. The instrument said green. The wave regulators pulsed along their cycle, neat as a metronome. The stress gauges on the diaphragm's mounts read with intolerance. Ghost did not care. He stood and leaned into Ethan's leg the way he does when a thing you can't see is already happening. Talk to me, Ethan said. Habit. He didn't need Mara to translate. He needed to believe dialogue was still possible. No anomaly above threshold, Mara reported, and then caught up to the dog. Subharmonic cavitation onset at West Plate 5. A beat. Sensors averaged it out. What fails first? If unabated, bolt shear on plate 5, then piston slap, then cascade to phase coupler, sequence time under high load, 90 seconds. Ghost's ears flattened. His pupils went to war size. That was not 90 seconds. Mitigate, Ethan said, but his hand was already on the phase, on the breath. We drop load, not function. We make the diaphragm exhale less, not stop. Taper path ready, Mara said. Now, now, now. He rode the 0.7 down and took the west face's cycle 2% lighter, then 4, then 6, each in absence, not push. The cavern's timbre changed a quarter tone, violins easing pressure on the bow. Bolts do not sigh, they decide. Plate 5 chose to stay. The subharmonic tucked its tail and went looking for a weaker lodge. The gauges stayed politely within green, and Ghost's chest rose and fell twice with the new rhythm. Ethan didn't unclench. He rearranged the clench into something the body could call ready again. Event avoided, Mara said. Credit, canine. Credit, refusal to shout. I will adjust averaging to trust the dog sooner. You'll learn, Ethan said. He already did. Ghost leaned his head into Ethan's thigh and then away. Ceremony complete. The weather shut its narrow window. The hush filled with rain. Ethan stayed with the phase, feather light. We should answer, he said, not with noise, with thanks. Define thanks in breath, Mara said. Ethan pictured the dog's stare rhythm, the deep's mirrored joke, the humming, hospitality, and the bolt that had decided to stay. He put a hand to the coupler and tapped out a short bow in micro absences. 1, hold 1, a nod you make with your whole chest. The 0.7 lifted fragmentally, held, returned a 1, hold 1 with that fifth smile hidden inside. It wasn't human gratitude. It was acknowledgement, the kind machines can't fake and animals don't try to. Ethan wrote 2 words in the log, they know. On the shelf, the blue filament made a decision that didn't fit its contract with the hunter. It backed off half a cable, then a full. It held there, facing not the ledge, but open water, like a man turning to keep privacy for a conversation not his. Courtesy, Mara said, surprised into a human word. Listeners recognize a room, Ethan said. Hunters recognize a prize. He watched the heavier shadow behind slide nearer, frustrated, then pretend it had never moved. The storm swatted it with a wave that had the grammar of laughter. Ghost watched none of this. He watched Ethan and the rib and the small part of air that connects all 3. He closed his eyes because for a moment there was nothing to do and all of it to keep. Scene 9. The answer. We keep. The window closed. The rain returned to its practice sentence. The diaphragm settled into a work song. Ethan leaned his head against the rib and let the 0.7 count so he didn't have to. He opened Julian's journal and found a page he didn't remember seeing. Maybe it had waited until now to be legible. If you manage to ask and also listen, you don't get answers. You get others. Under it, small letters. Good. Ethan set the journal down. He rested his hand on Ghost's head. The dog's ears went loose in a way that means home even when the roof has become a rumor. Status, Ethan said. Held, Mara answered. Blue listener at polite distance. Hunter irritated. West Plate 5 stable. Diaphragm learning your bow. And the deep... She paused, as if picking a dress for church. The deep is keeping your dog's name. Ethan nodded once. No smile, not yet. Smiles are for sure. He wrote in the log, ask, ghost in breath, answer, mirrored with grain, new count 21535, dog alerts cavitation, tapers save plate, blue listener shows courtesy. He set the pencil down and allowed an inch of peace to live in his shoulders. The station maintained its hold. The rock returned the favor. Somewhere under everything, a hand squeezed once in the dark, here, and did not let go. By pre-dawn, the storm had tired of speeches. It turned its last page without ceremony, Marie. A low gray, a long breath, a sea whose anger had learned manners. The shack above was a sketch of itself, more line than shelter. Below, the station kept its own weather, cool, exact, clean as a scalpel. Ethan stood at the central rib and let the 0.7 hertz line count his lungs so he didn't have to. Ghost slept in soldier posture. Eyes slitted, ears loose, one paw touching Ethan's boot, as if tether were a verb you could set gently. Barometer rising, Mara said. Window will widen. A beat. An old window may close. Which? Human patience. On the shelf, the blue listener loitered at polite distance, farther than curiosity demands, closer than protocol allows. Behind it, the hunter idled like a roomer wearing a uniform. Ethan logged without thinking, calm after argument. Both contacts present. It began with a small lie. The hunter cut thrust and let the swell carry it in with debris, the trick men use when they want force to look like accident. A tethered shape drifted off its stern, a puck, black, matte, the size of a dinner plate, a throwaway pinger with more nerve than ethics. Object released, Mara said. Low power active, close to seabed, a hand feeling under a locked door. Ghost's eyes opened without the rest of him moving. His nose lifted, his ears did the old arithmetic. He didn't growl. He breathed shorter, a dog's metronome changing tempo by one click. Ethan felt the change in his shin bone like a memo delivered by Knuckle. The puck pinged, not at Seawolf. At the north cleft, where kelp braided into a braid that could be mistaken for a seam if you'd never learned patience. The ping walked along the rock, then down, then sighed. Clever, cheap, incorrect. Do we stop it? Ethan asked. We embarrass it, Mara said, almost prim. We teach it the shape of no purchase. She shifted the cleft hum to a wide, friendly undertone, not to mask, to offer a truer room tone. The puck heard a place that was already full. Not with noise, with listening. Its return went muddy. Its path stuttered. The hunter nudged it with a micro-thrust like a parent pretending not to drag a child. Ethan didn't smile. He logged. Puck denied without force, courtesy hum sustained. The blue listener slid half a cable nearer, then halted. A gesture that said, I will not cross your fence, but I will stand where you can see me when I speak. The array caught a thin, descending ladder of tones. Not 0.7, not human communications band. A breath code cousin. 112, hold 1. Mara translated nothing and everything. Meaning? Ethan asked softly. Context suggests down, Mara said, or below. Or in human, keep low. Ghost stood and placed both paws on the rib the way he had when the deep named him. His weight said agree. Ethan looked at the west face schematic and imagined the hunter's next cheap trick. Not a puck, a charge. A shaped slap meant to crack kelp and flakestone, not destroy, bruise. It wouldn't kill the diaphragm, it would teach it to limp. Julian didn't build for perfect weather, Ethan said. He built for human habit. He built for doors, Mara replied, and the door remembers. In the lower chamber, the classroom under the lid, to remain, a brass plate waited on the pedestal. Ethan had read it before and then forgotten it, and then found it again because doors reveal their letters when your hands are dirty. If they knock wrong, let the house answer. Do not strike. Shift. Beneath, etched lighter, almost ashamed, west face shunt. Stillness key, ask in reverse. Shunt, Ethan said aloud, feeling the word rather than understanding it, a controlled misalignment. Let the diaphragm pass energy to a dummy flange for a breath. Open a sluice of pressure to a slot that eats pings. Show nothing where attack expects a button. It will look like a door open, Mara said, but it is a hallway to nowhere. Harmless to us, exhausting to them. Non-lethal, Ethan said. Polite, Mara said. And if a voice could smile without teeth, hers did. They waited for the hunter to pretend it wasn't going to do what it had already decided to do. The charge came as a low slap, pressure pretty, not crass, designed by engineers who had never once apologized. It kissed the kelp bed and pushed a question into the rock that wasn't a question. Ethan asked in reverse. On the still point between crest and trough, he tapped the phase coupler and feathered 3 small unbreaths, 1 hold 4 unbreaths backwards. The shunt accepted the invitation like an understudy who had always known the lines. The west face shifted. A dummy channel opened. A throat that led to a stomach that led to nothing. The charge's echo went down that throat and got tired. The hunter's instrument saw movement and drew wrong conclusions with beautiful confidence. It fired a second slap at the dummy. The dummy ate it too. They believe they've found a door, Mara said. May they knock until they learn manners. Ghost's mouth opened in a pant that wasn't heat. Relief as a verb, practiced quietly. The blue listener did something the hunter hadn't bought a receipt for. It surfaced. Not fully, a skin break, a moment, enough for a mass to show above the wash. and on that mast a light that blinked in a pattern no maritime book would print. 1, hold, 1, 5. Mara didn't translate. Ethan didn't need her to. Bow, then smile. The mast dipped. The listener sank again, its ballast whispering. It held station between the hunter and Seawolf like a gentleman who chooses to stand in the wrong place so his friend may remain in the right one. They are teaching their hunter embarrassment, Mara said. Or buying us time, Ethan said. Same thing sometimes. Ethan's throat hurt in the way that means you've remembered a picture on a mantle you never had. The hunter wasn't a fool, only busy. It realized its child toy return curves didn't map to a door. It trimmed to south and tried the west face again, drifting, dumb, learning by falling. Ethan didn't engage. He withdrew phase until the diaphragm did only what lungs are born to do. The station went quiet in a way that means present. Stillness, Mara said. Stillness, Ethan agreed. The hunter drifted across no lever for the second time in 2 nights and discovered the instruction men hate most. Nothing to hold. It cranked a stiffer ping to prove it was still in charge of something. The rock declined the conversation with courtesy. Ghost's ears went neutral. He sat. He blinked. He asked for nothing. The 0.7 had been patient. It had waited while men played at doors and machines played at manners. Now it made its own choice. A new texture braided itself into the line. Not the grain of sand on glass, something like the sound a thumb makes when it circles a sleeping child's back. The breath cuts came. 2, 1, 5, 3, 5. Ghost's latter name. Then the 3 hold, 4 Ethan had given the ledge. Then a third phrase Ethan had never seen. 4, 4, 1, hold, 2. Mara parsed structure, not meaning. It's a string, she said it. 2 learn names. 1, offer. Ethan didn't translate. He watched Ghost. The dog rose and walked to the lower ladder where the west classroom door waited. He put his paws on the top rung and did not descend. He looked over his shoulder at Ethan, not asking, asking. Below, Ethan whispered. If they tell us below, we go below. They descended together. Man on steel, dog in that careful choreography men don't deserve. In the lower room, the pedestal's dead face woke, not with numbers, with color, a ring of blue like a vein seen through skin. Etched beside it, too faint to have been legible yesterday. Keeper. When the door speaks a third name, the house remembers you. Under it, small, J.C. Ghost placed his paw on the blue ring as if he had been born to do that gesture in that room at that hour. The ring pulsed once. The west shunt retracted. A panel at the far end of the lower chamber sighed sideways. Behind it, not a corridor, a well. Air moved up from it like a clean, cold promise. Vertical access, Mara said, reverent. Julian never opened this for me? Ethan stepped to the edge and shone the lamp. The beam went down a long way and didn't hit bottom. The 0.7 rose from it like a candle held 10 floors below. Later, Ethan said, well, the hardest word that isn't no. We don't descend into a new throat with a hunter sniffing outside. Agreed, Mara said. Not because she feared, because she had learned later too. Ethan sealed the panel. The blue ring dimmed to a memory you could keep in your pocket without burning a hole. Sun. Found the horizon by accident more than design. Light through cloud made the ocean a slate with a teacher's hand lifted from it. The blue listener slid away on a line that said tomorrow. The hunter found a pretext and followed like a brother insisting he wasn't. Ethan logged with neat block letters. The way men write when they want to be read by the future. Trespass by puck, denied with invitation. Blue listener issued down. Hunter slap absorbed by shunt. Dummy hall exhausted appetite. Listener surfaced. Blinked courtesy. Third name offered. Vertical access revealed. Door remembers. We are remembered. He set the pencil down and let his hand shake. Not fear, not fatigue. Awe. Edged with the relief that doesn't yet know how to live in a body. Ghost pressed his head against Ethan's thigh, as if to align both of them to the 0.7 for the road ahead. Mara spoke only once, choosing a register she had never used. "Keeper, we have entered story, storm logic was chapter, this is grammar." Ethan nodded, not to her, not to the rib, to a man he could no longer thank. "We won't shout," he said, "we'll build rooms." He looked at the sealed panel and the remembered ring. He pictured the deep carrying Ghost's new name like treasure, and the way doors can choose their owners if you let them. "Part 2, he said softly to himself, to the dog, to the stone, and the sea. We go down. Outside, a gull wrote a word only the wind can read. Inside, the 0.7 held, then lifted, the smallest bough. The storm taught us its logic. A courteous listener stepped back. A hunter learned there's no lever here. And when the deep spoke a third name, the rock remembered, opening a shaft where light turns blue and breath turns code. Part 1 ends at the edge of that well. Part 2 begins below. If the 0.7 hertz pulse is still in your chest, subscribe and tap the bell so you won't miss the descent. Tell me in the comments, what do you think waits down there? Machine, animal, or someone? Click the next episode. Part 2, Down the Well. Silence opened the door. Now we go through.